Bum 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 bum. The Peter Dislike Show. Bum 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 bum. So I'm living with a bunch of digital nomads, and I was just thinking about how much time I could save if I could work remotely. Granted, I don't necessarily want to work 100% remotely because I love the chemistry I have with all of my students. But for starters, I want you to think about how much time that has to be spent going to the office versus working remotely. Now, don't just stop at the commute, right? You got to remember there's a lot of things that have to go on in between the commute and the job itself, right? You might have to spend more time dressing up if you were going in person. It might limit your food options, and then you got to think about the time to do that. Also, the expense, right? You have to convert what you spend on the expense of driving there. Don't forget, how do you pay for that? With your work, right? And so convert that to how many hours you need to spend to earn all the expenses that go into a commute and all the time that is spent on the commute with dressing up, with all the overheads involved, and add that up. And when I added it up, I spend more time on the commute, the upkeep, and all the overhead, plus the time to earn that money. It was about 3 times as much as what a typical person might get for vacation time. Right? So, in other words, all this bickering about how we don't have enough vacation time, we then blow it on our commute, right? I've met a lot of people who come from Europe. They got a lot of vacation time, but all this bickering about vacation time, and then we turn around and blow it on mandating everybody return to the office. I just think that's insanity, insanity. But there's another reason why I love remote work. Unfortunately, I teach at a community college. I really need the chemistry with all of my students. There's another reason why I love it. I suffer from eating disorders. I'm a recovering eataholic. When I have a really intense craving, one of my favorite strategies is to tell myself, I'll just go 5 minutes without whatever food it is. If I still want it 5 minutes later, I can always have it, right? That food's not going anywhere. We live on a very abundant planet. I'll let you pause the video to think why working in the office might short circuit this kind of logic. Well, the problem is that 5 minutes from now, I might not be in a situation where I'm allowed to eat, right? If I'm working at a desk or in front of clients, which is why I wish as a society we normalize the concept of eating at our desks, in the classroom, wherever. I very seldom, I teach in a classroom. Some of the classrooms they frown upon eating in there. I very seldom enforce the rules unless the students are really making a fool of themselves. I probably will never enforce the rules unless the students were making a fool of themselves. I sometimes get in trouble for that, for not enforcing. I don't eat in there, but I don't enforce the rules. I was working at a tutoring center, and I make sure to teach the students to be mindful about not getting their food everywhere. Some foods can make other kids sick, right? I tell the students, even if you're eating something that nobody in the world would be allergic to, just make it a habit of not getting your food everywhere. The students sometimes will forget, and then I'll remind them. One time, the student argued with me as I was reminding him about it, and this caught my boss's attention. He came by the desk, and he says, why do you even let the students eat in front of you and all that if it's going to bother you so much? Because it's less of a restriction to allow them to eat and learn about how not to get their food everywhere than it is to just outright not allow them to eat, right? But my boss doesn't see it that way. And plus, it's a very important lesson, in my opinion. And, it's one of those. But short of that, even if you don't agree with my stance on the eating and all that, just the fact that we spend the equivalent of 3 annual vacations on commuting to work, I think that really blows the mind, right? I encourage you to do a calculation. It might not be that much for you, but I guarantee it's something. It's probably something sizable, right?